Hey, good morning, guys. It's David here with From Military to Millionaire, and I'm here with Christian Montalvo, and she and I got connected via a buddy of mine, Jacob Ayers, who runs a podcast called The Real Estate Way, and I was a guest on that, and she was recently a guest on it as well, and so I had posted asking people for recommendations for like video podcasts, my YouTube interviews, and I want to say you were the first, maybe second, but you were one of the first or second names that somebody tagged me. And with the exception of somebody told me, they said me, and I said, you have to tag somebody else. I might talk to you. And then somebody else said Donald Trump. And I said, that's great, but please tag him, because I don't think it works if he doesn't see it. Not that I'm ever going to get to interview that guy anyway, but I digress. Christian, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what got you started, I guess, a little bit about your story in real estate investing.
Sure. Hey, thank you so much first for having me. I am really excited to be here. Just a little bit about my pre-real estate background. I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas. My dad is an Air Force vet, a turned mail carrier, and my mom is an administrative assistant for the school district I grew up with. So my point is I grew up very working class family, nothing special, and I just kind of went through that standard blueprint of graduate high school, go to college, get out of college, get a job, maybe get married, buy a house. I went to Oklahoma State and studied food science. I got a master's in food science, specialized in food microbiology, nothing related to real estate at all. And for the past 5 years, I've worked in a really weird area, which is contract cleaning for food production facilities. Basically, I work third shift in places where they make your food, and I make sure everybody's being compliant as far as food safety and safety regulations go.
That sounds like a job I would never want to do.
Yeah, it takes a special person for sure.
That being said, there's a lot to be said for having a job that not everybody would want to do. It's job security and usually implies a little bit better paycheck than, say, working at the job everybody wants.
Yeah. So with that being said, I made decent money as a recent college grad. I worked very hard, working nights, traveling most of the time. In 2016, I traveled 43 out of 52 weeks.
Jeez.
And we're not staying really cool places. We're staying like middle of nowhere chicken plants, things like that. But I was spending my money at an alarming rate. And one night I'm just driving down to Houston for work, 10 o'clock at night, and it hit me that this lifestyle is not sustainable. I was 25 years old at the time, engaged. I was thinking about, one day I want to be a good wife. I want to have kids. And I became scared of the instability I was creating for myself and my future by how I was just spending money and, just being silly with it. Luckily, some people don't get that realization until much later in life. I got it pretty quickly. And I basically was praying about it, still wasn't really taking action. And a few days later, one of my friends turned me on to Keith Weinhold's Get Rich Education podcast. At first podcast on there is really, really good. It talks about house hacking and all the things that he did, getting started and a friend of his did. And then I was just hooked. I fell down the investment real estate rabbit hole, found bigger pockets forums, just, Rich Dad Advisors, everything just went crazy. Basically,
the purple library.
Yeah, the purple library. Yes, all of that. And I got home from that trip and went up to my fiance and said, hey, we're changing everything. When we get married, we're going to live off of one income, and we're going to save all of our money, and we're not going to do anything fun until we buy a duplex, and then we're going to live in one side and rent out the other, and we're just going to keep doing it over and over and over again. And he just looked at me like, what? I don't know about this. But that's how we did. I got him on board, and that was in April 2016, we bought our first house hack. And it took us about a year to save up. We were getting married at the time, had some other things going on. But yeah, it took us about a year from my realization, pretty much. We had closed on our first house hack.
That's awesome. So you said April of 2016?
April 2016 was when we closed on our first deal.
That's super cool. So you now have 8 doors in a matter of 2 years, like a little bit of change.
Yep, we closed on our 8th door in June of 2018. So just over 2 years, we got 8 doors.
That's super cool. And I think mentioning when we were talking earlier, you mentioned that you've done 2 house hacks. So how did you transition, from the first duplex and the husband who was like, and this stinks, to, another multifamily live-in house hack, and he's still on board? And some people are iffy on living in a house hack. So how do you manage to make that transition?
Yeah, it was definitely a big change. So just to give some background, we went from living in a 1-bedroom apartment that we were paying $900 a month for, which was the cheapest-ish. We were paying a little bit more because we were living month to month, and that was the cheapest-ish we could find for the area where we were living. My husband was 25 minutes away from his job, and we found this duplex in North Dallas. Turned his commute into almost a 90-minute commute one way. So he was commuting 3 hours a day back and forth, and it was tough. With our first day having that house hack, I was in California, and I get a call at 10 o'clock at night, California time, that the AC isn't working and the tenant has her grandbabies in the house and it's 100 degrees Texas weather. I just thought, oh my gosh, this is how it begins. But it ended up being, that was the only nighttime call I've ever had in the past 2.5 years, knock on wood. And we ended up, I think she was more testing us, seeing, how fast, what we were going to do. And we just jumped on top of it. We lived in there. We had our tenants next door. We got used to helping them fix things. We fixed stuff in our own place. Again, the hardest part of that was my husband's commute. And I just kept telling him, let's just make it 1 year. Let's just make it 1 year. In that time, I ended up getting pregnant, and it was not planned, but one of the best things was being able to pause and say, you know what, at least our living expense has been cut down. We went from paying $900 a month for a 1-bedroom house to a 3-bed, 2-bath, half duplex that we started paying $500 a month for, because the tenants were paying the rest of the mortgage.
Awesome.
So that was awesome. That really helped when we were thinking about daycare expenses and things like that. But then a year later, in April of 2017, my baby was 1 week old, and I had a timer on my phone that was going to tell me when it was our 1-year mark. It went off. I think I was sitting on the couch with him. It went off, and I said, okay, it's time to call the bank. I had a C-section, so I wasn't cleared to drive or do hardly anything. So I actually took a walk with my baby in the stroller to the Wells Fargo that was down the street from us, and was like, hey, I'm here to refinance my property. And they just looked at me like, what? Where's your husband? Like, what's going? They actually asked me if I wanted to wait for my husband to get off work. And I was like, no. This is fine. Let's go. Trust me, he's ready to get out of this. So we did a refinance. We found out our property appraised for $40,000 more than what we bought it for, which was awesome. I know that's not always the case, but that ended up being a really nice little deal for us. It made the refinance very easy. And then we refinanced out of that. We used an FHA to buy that first property. So we got out of that so we could have another FHA available to us to do our next house hack. And in October of 2017, we closed on our second house hack, which was a 4-plex.
Super cool. Yeah. So there's a lot of awesome things in there. I'd try to unpack. So I guess first, let me make the statement. I meant to make it earlier. For those of you who noticed, she's not military, although there is some in her family history. But just some people, obviously, the title From Military to Millionaire is like my journey, and we definitely do like to help military personnel and public service and everything. But realistically, it's the working class. So if somebody can invest on a military W-2 salary, they can invest in any W-2 salary. It's not about your career currently. It's about how do you take that money that is not very much and turn it into wealth. So that is why we are interviewing, in case somebody is, naysaying. You don't have to be in the military to talk real estate. You just have to be motivated. So yeah. And then, so the house hacks, I love the fact that you mentioned the bank asked you about your husband. I think that kind of stuff is funny because it seems like that's still sometimes one of those stipulations.
Yeah, it is. It's really weird, but
yeah, it's totally not the same as like there's the jokes about like the O'Reillys and AutoZone and like, oh man, if you're a girl, they're gonna try to take mess with you. Like the reality is finances is not that should have no play whatsoever. So I think it is hilarious to me, the idea of you being post-surgery, carrying a baby in a stroller down to the bank and being like, my phone says it's time to refinance today.
Yeah.
That's just awesome. And I can just imagine how he must have felt, because I would be like, no, 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 go back to bed. We can do this next week. Like, go rest. And so
Yeah.
that's super funny. Okay, so man, I really like the idea of the house hack, and I like that you guys do it together. So I did my first house hack single, and we haven't done one together yet, and we want to. So I guess any advice that you would give, because I know your fourplex is not a 3-bed 2-bath like your first one, so
Yeah.
now you guys are living a little bit closer.
Yes.
Any
Yeah.
advice for the, not necessarily the property headaches, but the you and family living, with tenants side of things that people worry about?
Absolutely. I think living with tenants isn't really an issue at all. If you're used to living in any kind of apartment or, military housing, something like that, it's very similar. It's just we create professional relationships with our tenants where we say good morning, we say, hey, how are you, how's it going, we have some little kids that live down below us at different holidays and stuff. I bring them like little treats and things like that, but that isn't really the issue. It's just more about, it's sometimes harder. I find this ideal house hack that's right by where somebody works, and that's more of the struggle. So it's a lot of sacrifice. It takes a tremendous amount of sacrifice, and both people have to be on board, not to not make it work, but just to make it in somewhat enjoyable. The trade-off was, to my husband, I said, hey, we're going to move closer to, I found a fourplex. I went and saw it again, taking my little, at this point he was 3-4 month old baby, and he wasn't in daycare yet. I was still on maternity leave. And I said, hey, I found us a fourplex. We're going to move into it. We're going to house hack it. And it's going to put you 30 minutes away from your job. And he's like, sign me up. I'm done. I was like, great. And then I was like, I'll give you the fine details later. And as we're walking around our spacious 3-bed 2-bath, like we have a room that is for the cats, like we do nothing with. I'm like, so our new place is about 600 square feet. It's a 1-bed 1-bath, and the baby's gonna have the master bedroom, and we're gonna sleep in the living room. And he just said, okay. And at the time, nothing could be worse than driving 3 hours a day. So he was definitely on board, and it worked. And now my baby is 18 months old, and he's like I like to call him a baby bull in a china cabinet. So he just topples everything over, and it's a crazy mess, but we figure it out. Again, it is a sacrifice. I go over to some of my friends' houses where they have just space and everything's nice and comfortable, and we're in our fourplex, and I'm like, okay, it's not forever. We're going to do this again. We're hitting our 1-year mark soon, and we're already looking actively for the next one.
Yeah, so we have I have a 9-year-old and I guess he's 21 months now.
Oh my goodness.
So totally understand I mean, we currently we're getting spoiled. It's like a 3, 2.5. It's the base housing. So it's nicer than anything I could ever afford out here in Hawaii, because the prices are like, a 3-bed or 2-bed, 1.5-bath, 1,000 square feet
Yeah.
on like 1/8 of an acre is like 800 grand. And the walls are like this, I forget what it's like, I call it single ply. I forget what they call it, but it's
Single ply.
yeah, it's terrible. Like, you can shake the wall, and like you and I could be having a conversation standing up against the walls, and it would sound like we were just talking to each other. You wouldn't know that there was a wall in between you, which is, yeah. So for, almost $1 million, it doesn't really make sense as an investment strategy. So we lived on base, and this is a great house in a great neighborhood. And I'm like, we're going to go house hack. And I just totally ruined my selling point on that, because there's no benefit other than the money, which is great. Don't get me wrong. But
there are lots of other benefits. It just depends what you're looking for, and it depends on what you find. So far, our house hacks have been interesting. Yeah, we traded closer to jobs for less space, and that's not always the case. There's definitely a couple in the area. And to say it this way, when we bought our fourplex, it's 3 1-bedrooms, and 1-bedroom 1-bath, and then the bottom floor is a 3-bed 1-bath. So automatically I said, okay, all these people, when we acquired the property, all the tenants were on month-to-month leases. I said, okay, we'll give someone a 60-day notice, and we're going to move into that 3-bed 1-bath. Then when I took a closer look at the units, I noticed that the 3-bed, 1-bath was a family. The kids went to school across the street. They had the place decorated. They were taking pride in where they were living. And I just didn't have the heart to kick them out of it. We found one of the units was a young guy who had lived here for 6 years. I don't think he had cleaned the place in 6 years. He had a cat that was going to the restroom on the floor. It was
Yeah.
awful. So I said, hey, we're going to just go ahead and move into the dirtiest unit. And in between our work schedules, we're going to spend a week. It only took a week to clear it all out and get it repainted and flooring put down. But so there was an option for us to live in something bigger, but we chose to live in the smaller unit just to keep the tenants in. I'm glad we did. I'm glad they're great tenants and the kids are happy, and they're long-term tenants definitely.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I actually, we won't name names, but I know a couple guys who are, fairly well known in the investor house hack realm who kind of the same mentality, and they will buy a house, much like that, and they could buy even if it was $1 million home out here in Hawaii or whatever, and they'll buy these places and they will find themselves like living in the shed outside to rent all the nice units, and it's like, I own $1 million house but I live in the shack
Yeah.
outside. And I'm, and that's, not the American dream or whatever, but that's brilliant. I mean, because you're in doing that, you basically, yeah, you're living in the smaller space, but your mortgage is just much more effective than if you kicked the biggest tenant out. And I mean, you'd still be doing well, but I think that's a power play for sure with the refinances to live in the cheaper unit.
Yeah, when we moved into this second property, we went from our $900 a month for rent, 1-bedroom apartment, and then we went to our 3-by-2 duplex house hacking, paying $500 a month. When we made the switch to this fourplex, we started cash flowing off of our first duplex, and then we started living for free in the fourplex, no money out of pocket, plus money on top of that a month we were making. So it was a big change. So that in itself also was such a big benefit, living for free, finally making some really quick, decent cash flow. And it was just, okay, we can do this. We can do this for a year.
Yeah, that's just super cool. So if you haven't read the book, Chad Carson's new book that came out with Bigger Pockets, I would recommend it. Because it sounds like you're pretty far along on some of those steps that as he lays out like his idea for retirement with real estate, which is the title of the book,
Mm-hmm.
Retire Early with Real Estate.
Yes.
Um, and and you guys sound like you're doing awesome, and there's some pretty sweet strategies in there as far as down the road with how to, I mean, you already have probably read a ton of books on 1031s and all that other good stuff, so we won't get into that, but the point
Yes.
here is that you are setting yourself up for success, and that's super exciting to be. I mean, I'm jealous. I have been looking to do the house hack. I want to do like the whole thing that I want to do is the VA loan, zero down, move in a fourplex, make it cash flow so that I'm not paying for it, and be able to say like, I bought this house with no money. I never put $1 in it. That's like my goal at my next
Yeah, that
vacation.
VA loan is so amazing. Like it's so I definitely if there was one thing, I wish I could go back in time, join the military and get all the benefits from the military and obviously serve my country and do something amazing and respectful, and thank you everyone listening for your service. But yeah, I mean that VA loan is amazing, and you'd be crazy not to just take advantage of it and do something like that with it.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. There are some downsides to it, like everything else. But uh, the idea being that you could, buy for nothing and live for free is pretty cool. Unfortunately, I got stationed in Paradise, and it costs a fortune to live in
Yeah,
Paradise, so that did not happen
unfortunately.
yet. Yeah, I mean, well,
So you have
it's
to do these
funny.
amazing 40-unit deals in other
Oh,
places.
that's yeah, my monster. If you see my newest YouTube video, my monster deal, which is because it's big, but also because it's a total beast. Which anyway, all right. So to transition out of kind of your story, what would be if you were to talk to, I guess, anyone in the working class who is asking you about, hey, I don't have a whole lot of money, or I don't make a whole lot of money. How do I get started in this? What would be like, what's the one thing you wish somebody had told you when you started learning all this on your own?
I wish, my dad, when I was younger, he always kind of was tried to teach us to live below our means, and he was reading books like The Millionaire Next Door and Dave Ramsey and things. And I was, of course, a teenager and was like, whatever, I don't care. I wish I could have grabbed hold on those quicker. And definitely the biggest thing was I wish my husband and I, even as just single income earners, would have lived below our means a little bit better when we first started before we got married. My first year out of college working, I basically squandered away all of my money just by, oh yay, I'm making money. This is so much fun. I have all this money. Let's go. Let's do all this crazy stuff. So I wish I had been more responsible with that. But I really think anybody can do this. There's so many options, whether you're using the VA loan, you can qualify for the FHA 3.5% loan. I have a girlfriend who's a single mom who is working towards that right now. And it's just about how dedicated are you? How much are you willing to buckle down, save, live below your means? You know, if you're married, learn to live off of one income, figure it out. It's just about how much of a priority it is. I promise you can figure it out. You can figure out a way to save money, earn extra income, and get creative. And once you get into this first deal, and especially the second deal for us, it just kind of picks up. We closed, it took us a little over a year and a half to close on that second deal from our first with the refinance and things. But once we closed in October of 2017 on our fourplex, and by February of 2018, we were in the process of buying another duplex. And it was just from the cash flow and again, just continuing to get better and better at living off of one income, living below our means, saving more money. Because once we got that first one, we're like, instead of it's, okay, we're good, we finally got this, we can spend a little bit more money. It was, hey, how fast can we get the next one? Let's keep going. And it's just very motivating. I just think it's about dedication. How bad do you want it? And just buckling down and doing it.
I like the fact that you pointed out after you got the first one, the mindset shift of how to get the next one. So I tell people all the time, like, and I know Bigger Pocket says it, and a lot of people point it out, but your first deal may not necessarily be your best deal, but it will probably be your most important, because so many people get stuck at the ideas and the learning and the analysis paralysis. And who cares? Buy the house, go for it. Like if the
Yes.
numbers look like they make sense, kind of, then if nothing else, you're buying a great education. So
Yeah, definitely. I remember my husband still not being completely sold after the first one just because of his commute and, a few things we're doing maintenance ourselves, or when we do have to call contractors, we're learning to figure out contractors and not be robbed blind, by that kind of stuff. And but when we got into the second one and it totally changed where it was no money out of pocket and we were starting to make an income, I mean, his mindset completely shifted. He's like, "You're right. This is what we need to be doing. Let's keep going. Let's keep at it."
yeah, that's super cool. So little trick that I heard, I mean, you're up early enough like me that this might work for you. I haven't personally done it yet because I haven't needed a contractor out here in Hawaii that I haven't already known. But if you end up looking for contractors, someone told me once that the best way to do it is to drive to Home Depot or Lowe's before they open and see who's already in the parking lot, because they'll be the guys who are up early to work on your place. They already know what they need without going by the job site, and they're the guys you want to hire. So
Yep, 4:45 in the morning, be at the Home Depot parking lot and see who's walking in and what they're
exactly.
buying. If you need a plumber, go down the plumbing section and see who's buying plumbing stuff.
That sounds to me like the greatest strategy. So in that regard, actually, I guess this is not in that regard. So transition.
Yeah.
uh, I saw a post on your Instagram with books in a bag, and it was talking about your daily carry bag, and it had one or two books that you read, a journal, and I think it was where you write your goals. So tell us, I guess, just a little bit about, I guess, any good books that you've read that you would recommend, and then what it is that you do with this daily carry bag.
Sure. I am obsessed with goal setting. Early on when I started falling down the real estate rabbit hole, I listened to Grant Cardone's first podcast with Bigger Pockets, and it just blew my mind. I bought his book and fell in love. Then quickly after that, I read The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. And those two books, the combination of the two just really changed, helped with my mindset had already changed, but it helped with the continuation of that mindset. I set my 10x goals, and then based on that, my husband and I actually together, we sit down and we create annual goals that we review every quarter. I take those annual goals and turn them into monthly, and then I break them down into weekly, and then the weekly is turned into daily tasks. So I carry with me a large planner, and nobody has to carry a large planner. You can do apps and things like that. It just works for me to physically write it and keep up with it and be marking those things off every single day. I have a journal that I continue to either rewrite these goals to remind myself. I follow one of the things is scribing in the Miracle Morning, journaling. And I'm not like a dear diary person. I have this crazy idea. I need to write it out right now and make a note and highlight it. I rewrite my goals in it. And then, I'm always reading 2 to 3 books at a time. Usually if I read just one book at a time, especially when it comes to physically reading, sometimes my eyes will start to glaze over. And if I can switch over into another book, it kind of keeps me intrigued on both back to back. It's just a strategy for me to keep myself reading. And and then I have, those are just my big things. And then I'm a Bible reader, so I keep carrying my Bible with me. But that's everywhere I go, I have this bag full of books. It makes people crazy. My mom's like, what the heck are you doing with this? This bag's so heavy, but it keeps me in check and on my prize all day long. And again, there are other
workout.
Yeah, and it's a workout. I get some cardio and some weightlifting going, that and my baby. But you don't have to do that. But it's what works for me on keeping on that Miracle Morning routine. I work nights, so my schedule gets kind of crazy. I'm not always perfect at waking up and doing my savers right away, but I have those as kind of a checklist throughout the day, making sure that at one point during the day, at least, I do my affirmations. I look at my goals. I visualize my goals, and that helps me keep on track all day long, no matter what time I'm awake.
Yeah, so I'm the savers, which is, for those who don't know, that's the portions of the Miracle Morning, which I'm going to try to say now, and I'm going to botch it, but it's silence, like meditation, affirmations, visualization, like looking at a board or whatever of your goals, and then exercise, which I usually would throw in at the end, reading, and scribing or journaling, writing. I'm really good at getting up in the morning at like 3:55. In fact, 6 out of 7 days of the week, I would say I'm up and already in my office by 4:15. And then I do this thing where I pick this up and I kick myself for it. But my time zone, it's by the time I'm up at 4:15, everybody's been at work in the rest of the world for 4 or 5 hours. So my property manager might have texted me or emailed, or I will get wrapped up in that thing and it'll be 6. And I'm like, well, shoot, I was supposed to read this morning. So I'm getting very good about putting it on silent, face down, and leaving it alone, just so that I can actually get some work done with it. So the Miracle Morning for me is awesome. And I find that between 04 and 06:30 is like my most productive time, because everyone's asleep, unless I'm waking them up right now, because it's, it is what it is. All right. So if somebody wanted to get in touch with you or just follow your journey, where can people find you?
Well, I love Instagram. I'm a typical millennial. I like to post what's going on. You'll see us change wax rings on toilets, patch up holes in walls, everything. I'm always posting on there. I have an email. People can email me anytime. It's cctrentalstech@gmail.com. But I'm also on Bigger Pockets. I'm a Bigger Pockets Pro member. Love to connect with people on there. I'm working on trying to be more active on there. One of my goals for upcoming in November is to try and spend 30 minutes twice a week on there, just responding to forum posts, things like that. Usually that's not hard for me to do. Once I get on, I'm in there, but sometimes I just get so wrapped up in daily life that it takes a bit for me to just log on. But it's a great resource, and people can definitely connect with me on there.
Yeah, I like that you recommended that. I find that a lot of times I point people towards my blog, and realistically, Bigger Pockets is a great place to point people to. So I've made it a point to annotate that in my blog and tell people. In fact, I'll send you a caller request when we're done with this. But I think, and this is a shameless plug, but Bigger Pockets, and especially their pro membership, I mean, that stuff helped change my life, right? So I attribute a lot of my success to them, because every time I was Googling stuff as a young investor, I'd be like, what do I do about this? Bigger Pockets. What do I do about this? Bigger Pockets, Bigger Pockets, Bigger Pockets. I'm like, oh my goodness, who is this guy? And so it eventually got to the point where I would be searching through the Bigger Pockets rather than Google for answers. and that's awesome. So Bigger Pockets, their pro membership's awesome. I'll put a link in the description if you're interested in checking it out. But I Yeah, that's honestly, I think that's probably one of the best places to connect because it's all real estate related people. So I mean, Instagram's great, and your Instagram has some good pictures, and I like, I liked your 2x4 idea for a handrail that I saw on there. So there's some pretty cool stuff on there, but that's also kind of marketing, not marketing, but talking to your family and your home life, which is great. But if you want like specific real estate knowledge, I think that's a great place to go find people
Mm-hmm.
and connect about like seriously asking questions and learning. So I digress. Christian, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and talking. I need to go talk to Jacob and tell him thanks for the referral. You've been wonderful. I really look forward to seeing what the future holds, and I'm probably going to be picking your brain at some point and being like, "Hey, I'm going to call my wife or me and like work us through how the hell we live in this fourplex because we are happy right now." No,
Because my child keeps knocking things off the
yeah,
walls.
because he's going to be 2 by the time I get to do a fourplex, and they say that those are the best years of everybody's life for living in small quarters. He's nuts. He's such a happy kid, but oh my goodness, like it's bedtime, go to sleep. About to start putting Jameson in the milk. I say things like that on public. I'm going to not edit that out, but I'm going to tell myself to edit that out so that you can think I am going to edit it out, and then it's anyway. Awesome. So yeah, I think that's, I mean, unless do you have any questions or parting words for the masses?
No, I will say this is something I did say when I was on Jacob's podcast, and it just really rings true. You are the 5 people of the 5, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So this will change you. This will change your goals. This includes everything, even family. If you have some naysayers in your family that are saying you don't need to save up and live in a duplex, you should just buy a single family home or buy that new truck you really want. Be careful who you're spending your time with. Find people. And if you have a hard time finding people, try and convert people. We have been able to convert some of our friends to think like us. Not all of them are wanting to be real estate investors, but a lot of them have converted to the living below your means, making good choices with money. And it's been a game changer for our journey as well.
Yeah, definitely agree. Every time I get around people who've been more successful than me, I seem to something good comes out of it. And when I hang out with people that are everything is someone else's fault, the victim thing, you can tell, and and I know in my head, and I'll even tell them like that's the wrong mentality. Here's why. Here's how you should look at it. And I still find myself at the end of the day going like, wow, I really don't like. Not only did I not get anything out of that, but I don't know that like it's just not worth hanging out around that. It rubs off on you negatively.
It really does. It really does.
Great piece of advice. I mean, you can see basically everywhere how much of a fan I am of networking. It is definitely the 10x my life. Yeah, networking and getting to know quality people is a huge point. So I'm glad you brought that up. So awesome.
Yeah,
Well,
it's a big deal.
Christian, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and I guess get ready for work now because
All
it's
right.
almost in the morning. So have a great day. And thank you guys.